Islam.
Islam.
Islam. First I rise to my highest height, giving all perfect praise to Allah, to send those honors to all true and divine prophets, Asiatics and Muslims. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Islam, boys.
Islam.
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 Islam. Wake up, you sleepy-headed Moors. All right, so now we have made it to part 2 of my demonstration of a few weeks ago in relation to time.
Islam.
So, it's been a couple of weeks. I'm going to do a brief overview. Since we have a lot of time, I guess we can overview and then I can continue on.
Islam.
Right.
Islam.
So, there's not going to be any difference on how our demos start. We're going to start from our foundation, our rock, our treasure of understanding. Islam.
Islam.
Islam. So, we're going to go to divine instructions from the Holy Prophet, chapter 47, instruction 7 to 9. There, dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa, across the great Atlantis, even unto the present north. So before I can, there's a comma there, so there's a break in the sentence, there's a break in the idea, there's a pause. So we're going to pause for 1 second and review what was just said in further words. Atlantis, that is not a body of water, but that is a accredited or a famed place of land.
Islam.
Right?
That's right.
Okay, so there's a land in between these two portions of east and west. So they're conjoined, meaning that they're two parts together. Islam.
Islam. Islam.
South and Central America and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands. So these islands belong to this portion of land. So we're dealing with the middle of the east and west and dealing with the western hemisphere between the north and south. Islam?
Islam.
Islam. Before the great earthquake, which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. So, as we know, we're coming from a holy record. Let's step into actual physical science instead of theological science.
Islam. Let's go.
So, when we deal with the planet, did the planet begin with water? No, it did not. When you look at geology, there was a point where you had the first rain. This happened according to that style of chronology millions upon millions of years ago. So, first you start off with a circle of land. And then as the land begins to move and disrupt itself due to volcanic movement, then the land starts to break apart, separate, and then it can, when you have gases released from this volcano, it covers the atmosphere. Now you have precipitation, now you have water. But this comes from the disturbance of the land. Islam? So let's be mindful in this record. We don't have to run and try to prove Atlantis, but we're going to get the understanding of these words. Sometimes the letter of the law is needed, but sometimes it also kills if you don't have the spirit of the law. So we're going to get the understanding of this.
That's right.
When it comes to the formulation of the layer, the outer layer of our planet, it was due to tectonic movement, shaking of the earth.
That's right.
Or quake of the earth. Islam?
Islam.
Islam. But before we get into the science, we want to stay in the theology. Okay? Now we go on to instruction number 8. The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Okay, so if something began, that means it will end, right?
That's right.
So if something has a beginning, it has a creator.
That's right.
So this waterway was made from a creator manipulating the ground. Islam?
Islam.
So now you can see there's another point of man or thought through action manipulating the ground for the benefit of man or understanding what is going on the planet in relation to man. Islam?
Islam.
Islam. Okay. Also, the Nile River was dredged by the great Pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade and extends eastward from the river Nile, westward across the great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. Now, that sounds nice. We hear the Pharaoh of Egypt. Ooh, this is great, right? But we have to understand what's going on here.
That's right.
There's a certain social dynamic going on, right? So, society is governed by its executive rulers.
That's right.
Right? So we understand a little bit about executive rulers, right?
That's right.
The executive ruler of this temple, Grand Sheik Yusuf Bey, right? The executive ruler of this state is Joseph Young, right? And then along with Sister Sheikess Yolanda Young Bey. And then you have the executive ruler of our entire temple, which is Supreme Grand Sheik Clarence Prather L, alongside Supreme Grand Sheikess Queen Mother Betty Prather L. Islam. So now you can see from the order in which we are formed is the same order of our ancestors. So when there's something that has to be done within the society, there's an instruction given by the executive ruler, and then you can see this action taking place in society. So we're going to read this again. So to understand this, let's put it in the example. Our Supreme Grand Sheik gives us an instruction. We carry out this order. The people need water, but there's nothing but land. But we understand water comes from underneath the land, through the land, or from the atmosphere through precipitation. So through our measurements and our instructions and our unity, we can provide for our people. We did it then, we could do it again now. Islam. And it was for what? What was the purpose of this? They was just bored, and they was like, hey, we need more water down here. No, there was a purpose, and it's given to you. This is the last two words of the sentence. Trade and transportation. Right? So, if you have ever been in any form of retail, you do not want to be your best customer. You understand? You want whatever it is that you are providing service to or patronizing with to move around. You need to have the ability to move around. Right? So, this is just the same. Because when you look at the Nile River, it goes from the Mediterranean Sea all the way down into Mount Kilimanjaro in the Congo. So from the Mediterranean, you can get into where? The Western world.
That's right.
You could cross that great area where Atlantis used to be is now water. So you're not just walking across. And if you don't, and if you not want to get caught up on names. We don't know if Atlantis ever existed. All right, so let's just deal with geography. When the land was one, it was easier to traverse from the eastern hemisphere to the western hemisphere when it was one. Now that it was a phenomenon of tectonic movement, there's a breakage. Now there's a large body of water. Now you need to invent some type of way of transportation for the benefit of your trade. So why did they need trade and transportation? Because even if you're a divine and national movement, a beggar nation will never rise to its highest height of spirituality. Islam. So, Moors, you have to be industrious.
That's right.
And industry comes by way of society in the governance of its executive ruler. Now, all that's good and said and well. So, where do we see that in any of our other records? Earthquake and things of that sort from our timeline. Do we see that in any other record? Okay, let's see. So we go to the Piscean record, right? Because who is Jesus? Jesus. Who is Jesus?
Prophet of Allah.
Jesus is a prophet of Allah, right? And about how long ago was that?
About 2,000 years ago.
About 2,000 years ago, right? So you have a timeline of this, right?
It's long.
Okay. So when you're dealing with AD and BC, What those abbreviations stand for? Amo Domini, which is the year of my Lord, right? And then you have BC, which is before Christ, right? So this earthquake, which is being pertained to, this takes place about 4,000 years ago. Okay? Because when you look at the genealogy of Jesus, who is first mentioned? Abraham, right? So there's a difference between the time of Abraham and BC, right? That's before Christ.
That's right.
So this is before what? His death or his birth? Before his birth, right? So we're going to go into a different span of time. Remember, my demonstration is time in relation to land, right? Time in relation to land. And man's physical form comes from what? The land. So in the way man governs his time is from the essence in which he is derived from and stems from. Before we go into the celestial part of the demonstration, I want to deal with the land. Because it's easy to get distracted when you start talking about stars and ethers and cosmos, and then I ask you a question about something I said 5 minutes ago you don't understand. No, we're going to keep this continuity nice and tight. All right? It's long, but like I said, this is the rock of our understanding. This is our foundation. So we're going to start off here, and then we're going to go and see this truth in other areas just to bring it back home. It's long?
It's long.
It's long. So I'm going to go into this Piscean record, and we're going to speak on some of the things which I said. So, where does it have pertaining to the genealogy of Jesus, right, through the line of Abraham, of an earthquake separating land? So, it's very simple. Genesis 10:25. Give me 1 second, Rose. I'm going to read this out loud. Because please don't take anything that I say. It's long?
It's long.
So, 10:25. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. So, you just went in there and found one verse, and that's supposed to be the truth. So you got one verse. Okay, let's go further into this record.
Go ahead, Mo.
So now we're going to go into, Amos 101. Oh, pardon. 1 Chronicles 1:19. And there's something else that I had denoted in my last demonstration. As you can see, it's called Chronicles. So it's dealing with the chronology of the Hebrew people. It's long?
It's long. 119.
119. It's long. I'm about to read it. Just give me 1 second, boys.
I got it.
Rest my son. I got it. 1 Chronicles 1:19. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the one was Peleg, because in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Okay, so now you have both in the book of Genesis and the book of Amos, this progenitor being denoted due to the event of the separation of land. Chronicles. Oh, pardon self, it's long. That's why you need your brothers. It's long. They communicate for the wise for their instruction. It's long, so don't fear getting corrected. Each one teach some, each one teach one, and we better ourselves. It's long. It's long. So in 1 Chronicles 1:19, it is then reestablished from in the book of Genesis that Eber is one of the main ancestors in relation to the Hebrew. All the descendants of Eber. So you have the Hebrew Joktanites, you have the Hebrew Moabites, you have the Hebrew Ishmaelites, and the Hebrew Israelites. So why do I say it in that order?
Go ahead.
Right? So, Abraham is first mentioned in the genealogy in Jesus, right? Who were some of the great fathers in which Jesus came?
Some of the great for Abraham,
Boaz, Baruch,
Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, Joseph by Mary.
So you have how many people mentioned it?
7.
7. It's long. Pay attention, right? So, but we're gonna stay with Abraham. So Abraham is the father of what?
Nations.
Nations, right? And before he became perfect and received the name Abraham, what was his name before? Abram. What does Abram mean? Abram. You Moors, y'all Hebrews. It's long. All right, I'll give it to you.
No, okay.
I am this truth because I've studied with it. Yeah, I've spent some more time in it. Y'all become that truth as well.
It's long.
It's long. So Abram means high father, right? So Abraham had a nephew. Did he not?
That's right.
Anybody knows his nephew's name?
Come on. Lot. I know that.
Lot, right? So who was his father?
Lot's father was Aaron.
No, Haran. Haran.
You was doing great.
Right? He's doing great.
You was doing great today, man.
It's all right.
That's why I got my brothers.
It's not. That's right.
Took that for the sheep.
So now you have Abraham, and he has brother Haran, right?
Yeah.
So Haran is the brother of Abraham.
That's right.
Right? So we're dealing with the line of fathers, right? So if you believe that nationality is denoted through the father, here you have all these sons of the same father, Terah, right?
That's right.
And another way for you to understand Terah is also in Latin, Terah means earth.
Islam.
Islam.
Terah.
Exactly. So where do we come from? Ground, right?
Working.
So before this book was in English, it was in what? Hebrew, right? One of the latest translations was in what?
Greek.
Old English, Latin. And before it became in English and the King James Version, it was Latin in the Vulgate.
That's right.
Before it was in the Vulgate in Latin, it was in Greek in the Septuagint.
Islam.
So these words are being used in relation to denote something that's in the spirit of this law. But we want to deal with the narrative as well, because you have to understand the story to understand the essence of the episode of what's going on within the narrative.
Islam.
So, back to what I was saying. Joktan was one of the earliest sons of Eber, right?
Islam.
That's right.
So, Eber is Hebrew, so you have Hebrew Joktanite. Now, we talked about how these Israelites are Arabs. When you do the genealogy of these people, they go back to the Joktanite Arabs, which is a descendant of Eber. There's no separation between the two. But Lot is the nephew of Abraham, meaning that you had the Hebrews, right? Father of the Hebrews. Then you had Lot's son, Hebrew Moabites, right? So Moab is older than Ishmael. Ishmael is older than Israel. So if you have a genealogy of time, you can see the relations between the fathers and the son without separation.
Islam.
Islam. Now, what is so important about an earthquake? I mean, it's a catastrophe. Houses fall down, this, that, and the third. But you have to understand that as holy as these books are, right? They are still books. Books are written by people, men, in relation to their experiences. For what? Understanding in the world around them and the interactions between each other. So, you can see where the earthquake is used to donate the changes in social order, changes in land, changes in between social statuses between nations and the Most High. So we're going to start off. Now we're going to Amos 101. Islam.
Islam.
Allah alone is perfect. Islam.
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 Islam. Amos 101. In the words of Amos, who was among the herdmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. Right. So, remember I said executive ruler, right? So, here you have executive rulers denoted in relation to a land phenomenon to give chronology, right? So, oh, you just got one verse out of here to prove your point. That's not sound. Okay, so now I'm going to give you 3 more verses. So now I'm going to bring you into the New Testament. So this all throughout this book, through and through. We're going to make this knowledge born. Islam.
Teach.
So now we're going to go into the book of Matthew. And we're going to go in chronological order in relation to this narrative. So we're going to go from chapter 24, 27 to 28. So you can see the continuity. Islam? Islam. So Matthew 24, 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. Islam? So there's 2 things to get out of here. There's social change in order. Now you have man against man. You have kingdom versus kingdom in relation to executive rulers. So when we started off in the Circle 7 Quran, we heard about how in relation to the change of land, the change of the social order in relation to the executive ruler. All these things are now continuous with one another, both in our holy divine pamphlet and also in the good book. Islam? All right, so now we're going to move on to the next verse. This is Matthew 27, verse 54. Islam? Now when the centurion, which means basically a guard, and they that were with him watching Jesus saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly, this was the Son of God. Islam? So, when you see a picture of Jesus in Christianity, there's something over his head, is it not? What are the letters over his head? I-N-R-I, right? So, what that translates to from out of the Latin into English is Isus, Jesus, Nazarene, Rex, King of the Jesus, or Jesus, King of the Jews, right? So here you have, in relation to a social phenomenon, in relation to executive ruler, in the changing of the system of the people. Islam? Islam, all right.
You every time now.
Islam. Come on, Mo. Come back and get this demonstration, Mo.
I'll be right up there.
Islam.
They coming.
Islam. So, I'm going to give you another one. This is out of the book of Matthew. Now, you know, as we're going to say, like I said, these are books. Every book has an author, whether it's inspired by the word of God. So we're not going to take these things too out of far the context. We're showing the relation of truth in a time and event relation to man.
Islam.
All right? Islam. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door. Islam. That should resonate with you. There's a chapter in the Moorish Holy Quran where it speaks about a stone being moved by a brotherhood of angels. Islam. Islam. So you could look at this little pamphlet and sleep on it. It's a book full of truths. Islam. And rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. All right. So it talks about an angel, right? Moorish Americans, and in relation to these angels,
you all have the same mother.
Yes, we all have the same mother and father, right? So we're talking about a people. So who protects the holy city of Mecca? Angels, right? So it's talking about our ancient foremothers and forefathers, right? Now, as you understand, there is a holiness to that title angel. You're not given that title. It's something that has to be earned. Yes, you descend from angels, but as we know, there's some fallen angels too. I need to know your pedigree. I need to know your type. Because you could be an angel, but what are you an angel for? What is your works and your deeds? Islam? Islam. So, another thing that goes along in this narrative as far as earthquakes is a specific era of time. Islam? So what is that era of time? What is our prophet to us?
He's angel of Allah.
He's an angel of Allah, right? We also say that he's the last prophet in these days and times. These days and times, right?
That's right.
So it's like a coming to an end. All this is coming to a pinnacle. This is called the Day of Judgment. Right? The Quran talks about the Day of Judgment. Right? The book, the Injil, the Revelations talk about the end of time. Right? This is the time of judgment. Right? Okay. So let's touch on that a little bit. But before we go into there, like I said, I'm going to give you enough scriptures so you can have the continuity. And then I'm going to bring it all together, and then we're going to start going into the science of this. Islam? So now we're going to go into the book of Mark. Mark 13:8. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. So it uses some of the same exact language as the verses that was quoted before it. Right? Islam. So now we're going to go into the book of Luke. Now, the book of Luke is a little bit more dependable than some of the other books of the Gospels. Because in relation to this character's narrative, in relation to the character's narrative of Jesus being a symbol of love, he was actually within the social circle of Jesus. Islam. 21:11. And great earthquakes shall be in the divers places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. Islam? Okay, so there's a few things to pick up from this. What is a diver's place? Man, what is a diver's place? Where would you dive into?
Water,
right? Diver's place. So where do earthquakes begin?
In the water. Tectonic plates under the water.
Underground. So all the water that's on earth. The earth is 70% water, right?
That's right.
Right?
Islam.
To the surface of the planet. 70% of the surface of the planet is governed by water.
That's right.
The rest of it is tectonic crust, then you have magma, and then you have the core. Right? So if it's talking about diverse places, you can see not only did these people have the knowledge of what was on land, above land, but also underneath it. These people wasn't ignorant to the system of nature that was around them. Islam. Because I'm not here telling you about my trip on Mars. Why I'm not telling you about my trip on Mars? I've never been. Right? And I could lie, cook it up, make it sound real nice, but if you study the facts, Mo ain't never been to Mars, Mo. Right? So they're speaking on what they know. They're speaking on what their experience is.
That's right.
And they codified it in this literature, in this form. Now, let's stick with the continuity of the narrative. Now we're going to go into the Injil as we understand as Revelations. Islam? Y'all with me? Y'all have any questions?
I'm just open. I'm Divers place.
In a couple of verses that you read. Divers place.
All right, so I'm going to read it one more time. This right here is the last one that I read. This is Luke 21:11. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. That's long? All right. So you have the signs. In the book of Genesis, what are the signs? What is the signs? Stars, constellations, right? So you see ordinance being given in relation to heavenly bodies, right? Because what is time? Time is a measurement between 2 points. So approximately 12 days ago was the new year, right? Happy New Year. Everybody saying Happy New Year. Okay, you took a trip around the sun. What's so important?
Exactly.
You went from the point A that you was to point B. And then that time itself is in relation to finance. It was a fiscal year.
It's not even real.
All right? We're going to break that down because we're going to see how we govern years and how we govern time. But before I start going into lunar calendar and solar calendar and the Enochian calendar, let's keep it grounded, okay? Islam. But we want to show how our ancestors gave time. Now, let's go back into the circle 7 because now we're going to start talking about a little bit more time. And we heard this earlier. As you can see, there's continuity between the demonstrations. Why? Because truth does not change, no pass away. Islam? All right. So, from olden times, it was ordained that you would be with us and in this sacred school be taught. All right, let me start over. All right. Chapter 2, education. That's the first word in this chapter, education. All right, so we're going to take a look at this education of Mary and Elizabeth in Zone, Egypt. So not only is this the capital empire of Africa, this is also the capital of learning of the ancient world. Islam? Islam. So it states, Elihu said, it is not strange, there are no happenings. Law governs all events. So what does the Torah mean? Law. What else is another word for law in relation to the Torah when it comes to translation? Instructions.
That's right.
So you govern yourself through instructions. Mathematics have certain laws. So you're going to follow laws for the betterment and the comfortability of your life. Islam. So it's good to have an understanding of how they are measured. Islam? Okay. From olden times, it was ordained that you should be with us in this sacred school be taught. Islam? Is this Sunday happy time?
Yeah.
Sunday school.
Sunday school. And where do you go to school for?
To learn.
To learn. When there was another word for that? Education. Islam. Islam, all right? So we measure time by cycle ages and the gates. I want y'all to hold on to this verse right here because it's going to pop up later on, and when it does, you're going to be like, oh. We measure time by cycle ages, and the gate to every age we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. So you see, from one point to a second point, you're measuring this movement, time. Islam? An age had passed, the gate unto another age flies open. At the age touch of time. This is the preparation age of soul, the kingdom of Emmanuel, of Allah and man. So, this is the time of Jesus, right? Right? Well, that's Emmanuel, right? The God within, right?
God is with us.
What does Jesus mean?
Justice.
So this is the time of justice.
Islam.
Islam?
Islam.
Right.
So, how does this justice come forth? Now we're going into the Injil. Islam?
Islam.
And as we know, when I say Injil, we're talking about the book of Revelations.
Islam.
Islam?
Islam. You working, Mo?
Sure is, man.
It's long. Okay. Now we in Revelations chapter 6, 12 through 14. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs, when she has shaken of a mighty wind. So, there's a change in time now, right? But I'm going to give you a little bit more context of what's going on, so you can understand. What color you have on, Brother Jeff?
White.
What color jacket you have on over your shirt, Moss? Right. What color I have on?
White.
Oh, okay. You sure?
It's long.
It's not black?
Nope.
It's white?
Yep.
Okay. We're going to read a little bit then. It's long?
It's long.
All right. So, and they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they shall rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren. What is the season? A cycle of time and measurement of what? A year. All right, so this is a new time. This is a new era of time now. This is a different season. Right? So let's bring it back down to earth. Right? If your show got 13 seasons, how many years has it been on?
13 years.
13 years, because why? It's appointed to what? A season. All right, so you got a cycle age, and at the end of that cycle age, another gate opens. It's long?
That's right.
So you're starting to see continuity in this measurement. But I won't get to the science yet, but we ain't gonna stay too much in one spot. We're gonna be at the epicenter of the circle and see how everything evolves.
It's long.
It's long?
Stay on your square.
It's long, indeed so. So, now, we're gonna have a little timestamp. We're gonna go to Revelations 11. So Revelations 11, 13 and 19. It's a couple of verses, but you want to see how it's in relation to our narrative. So what is Revelations in the narrative of the 66 books of the Holy Bible? What book is after Revelations? It's the end, right? All right. So when we started talking about earthquakes, we was in chapter 47, right? Right? So what's after that? What's the title of chapter 48?
The fulfillment of prophecies.
Islam. Thank you, brother. Our Lord, man. Islam. So now you see even the composition of the two books is relative to each other.
Islam. That's right.
Islam?
Islam.
All right. And then,
Come on, Bo.
You have to earn that one. You're going to have to earn that one.
Don't
Give up the juices,
Islam.
man.
Don't give everything.
So, here we go. Islam, Baltimore's. Revelations 11, 13. Islam?
Islam.
In the same hour was there a great earthquake. Stop. So I've been talking about seasons. Now we getting down to an even smaller measurement of time. Now we starting to get closer to denotation of time itself in measurement of a circadian system of 60. Right? So remember I spoke about the Joktan average, right?
Yes.
So when we look at that narrative of Genesis, within the narrative of the biblical narrative, Joktan remained in Sumer, right? And his sons moved westward. Abraham began in Sumer, headed westward.
That's right.
Through a what? A gate. Okay? So now let's look at these characters not as just people, but as the definitions, the meaning of their names, and their movability in the narrative. Now we're going to see a different picture come out this narrative. Right? So now you have the Joxanite Emperors in Sumer. So what's so important about Sumer? How many seconds is in a minute?
60.
How many minutes is an hour?
60.
60, okay. So now you have a module of time, right?
That's right.
So when you have 24 hours, what is that?
It's a day.
That's a day, right? Made up of 24 cycles of 60, right? So when you have those 24 hours multiplied by 30 or 31 or sometimes 28, this calendar is crazy. But anyway, you have a month, right? So what happens when you take that month and you give it 2 more months? That's 3, right? What's that?
90.
It's a season, right? Which is 90, right? So take 30 away from 90.
It's 60.
It's 60, right? So all these numbers have a cipher to it. 0, right? What's a 9 upside down?
6.
What's a 6 upside up?
9.
Okay. So all these numbers intersect from its highest point to its lowest point to its most widest point to its macro point. You understand? There's a continuity to it. So from one cycle age to another cycle age. And when that gate closes, you open up a new gate. So when you do that 60 seconds, then you have your minute. Do your 60 minutes, got an hour. 24 hours, got a day. 30 days, month. Right? 12 months, year. Now the circle is complete. Right? Is there an 8th day? No. So how do we govern this? 7 days. Oh, y'all thought 7 days was repeated 3 times just so y'all can help y'all remember? No. Let's read that. Y'all thought it was just, the prophet got tired of writing. 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. Let's get this over with. No. All right. How many days are in the circle?
7
days. How many days are in a creation?
7 days.
According to science, how many days are in a year?
7 days.
7 days. So, all right, let's get into this science. Let's get into horology. Let's get into the study of time. We're going to go back to where it began. The 60-second or the 60 circadian rhythm that we govern time now started in Sumeria. Where's the first city come out of? Sumeria, Mesopotamia. So from those who started to begin the chronology of time, which you order time, was of the same area Abraham and the Joxanites was from. Islam. So, since we get all that interaction, let's finish going through Revelations, because this is one of their descendants, right?
Islam.
And as I stated, now we have a denoted hour. So this phenomenon was triggered or visibly sought to begin by an earthquake. Now we're getting down to the hour. Now you're seeing the time becoming smaller and smaller to this very specific event. Islam?
Islam.
So, Islam. Okay. In the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted, and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly, and the 7th angel sounded. The 7th angel sounded. Doesn't that sound familiar? Oh, y'all thought these words were repeated a whole bunch of times because the prophet got tired of writing. He was like, here you go, right? What is question 96? Who made the devil? Elohim. Who is Elohim? Elohim is the 7 creative spirits that created everything that ever was, is, and ever more to be. What is Elohim sometimes called? Seven eyes of Allah. All right. So what? So is Elohim an English word?
Nope.
No. Well, where does it come from?
Hebrew.
So where does the word Hebrew come from?
Aramaic.
Eber.
Okay.
Oh, now we back at that ancestor again. So when you study humans through science, this is anthropology, and they have a special section for language, linguistic anthropology, right? So this word Elohim comes from the Hebrew dialect, which is an Afro-Semitic language, which is part of the superfamily of Afro-Asiatic. So what is the capital empire of Africa?
Egypt.
Egypt is the head of education, right? So if you had to communicate a lesson, it would be through this language or from this superfamily. Now you can see how these Asiatics in the land of Canaan, in traversing through Africa, communicated their lessons. All right? So this narrative containing certain words is a lesson in itself. We want to get caught up. Oh, 7 angels, they came out the sky, right, and everything was nice. And hold on, slow down. Get the understanding of what's going on, and then understand the relation of the text to what is being spoken of. So Elohim is a Hebrew word, right? So what does that Im mean? Plural, right? So Aloha, right, is one.
That's right.
So Elohim is 7 angels. These are the 7 eyes, right? So circle 7 in Quran, right?
Working.
And the one-on-ones, and the Bible, and the Apocrypha, and the Holy Quran, all on the same page. Islam? All right. The truth don't change and pass away.
No, it don't.
Islam. So we're going to keep reading. And the 7th angel sounded, and there was great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Christ. Is Jesus? Huh? Was it his Jesus? No, it was his Christ, right? So Jesus was what? The Christ, right? So when he was initiated into this order, the Spirit of God covered him, which was the Christ, which is the consciousness in relation to Allah, right?
Working, man. Working.
Okay? So now when this Christ consciousness comes before you, right? This executive ruler comes before you in preparation of the end of time. Right? This is happening right before you. You're not cooking this up. We're observing the chronology and the event of time. Right? So what was the greatest earthquake in actuality in human history in the Western Hemisphere? It was the earthquake of Haiti.
Oh.
Ain't that in the Atlantis Islands?
That's right.
Oh, y'all think it's a game. Right? So you can see scripture coming to life. The scripture is molded and made it off of the events of human history. And you have something that's called uniformitism, right? This is a scientific term for when it comes to geology, what happened before, what happened again.
360.
360. A circle. Now you can see the relation of time in relation to the unfolding of human history. It's long.
No strange happenings.
And may Allah bless those brothers in Puerto Rico suffering what they're suffering due to the earthquake now. But this even, I didn't want to speak on that, but it gives even more credence to what I'm saying. There's a disturbance between humanity in relation to the planet. So now there's a distinction between the kingdom of creeping things, the kingdom of protoplasts, the kingdom of angels, the kingdom of men. And due to all this disturbance and war and kingdoms, you have a disturbance in the very planet in which sustains you. So everything is out of order. It's not strange. There are no happens. Law governs all events, right? So humanity's in disorder. Nature's in disorder.
That's right.
The planet is in disorder. So who's going to put it back in order? Asiatics. Because who was the mothers and fathers of civilization? Asiatics and Muslims.
That's right.
All right? So now you've seen this narrative come to life. All right? It's just not words or fanciful idea of lights and people coming up the sky. It's good to understand the narrative so you can see the relation of how everything unfolds, but we don't get caught in the narrative. Islam? Islam. So I'm going to continue reading.
You working, Mo. You working.
Islam. It's 2:32. Okay. All right. So here we go. Islam. And the 24 elders, 24 elders, right, which sat before God on their seats, fell upon their faces and worshiped God. Right? Islam. So you have a grand body, right?
That's right.
In relation to its supreme ruler, right? Islam. Executive ruler. Saying, we give thee thanks, O Lord God Almighty, which art and was and art to come, because thou hast taken to thee the great power and hast reigned, and the nations were very angry in that. Thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they shall be judged. Judgment day, and the times. Islam. And thou, you shouldest give reward unto thy servants, the prophets, right? And to the saints, and them that fear the name shall, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. And the temple of God was open in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. And there was lightnings, and voices, thunderings, and an earthquake, and great hail. Right? So, let's go into our Lord. The Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the prophet and the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Who leads the Moorish Divine and National Movement? Really?
Allah.
Islam, Allah, right?
Theology.
So it's the Grand Sheik and the chairman, right? And it speaks of the grand body. So let's read this again, because we're in the temple, right?
Islam.
This is not a temple of God.
Islam.
Listen to this wording. And the temple of God was open in heaven. Now, when we read about heaven, right? It's not this place with big golden gates and stars and streets made of silver and gold. Is it?
Nope.
It's a state of mind.
Islam.
Right? The prophet said, if I could get you to think,
Save your life.
you would save yourselves. How did the prophet start uplifting the Moorish Americans? By teaching them to be themselves. Right? We have any relations to those angels?
Yes.
Yes. We are the same father and mother.
That's right.
So, it is not strange. There are no habits. Law governs all events. This is an education that was given to our ancient forefathers and foremothers. Now you see the narrative starting to come together. And read this again. And the temple of God was open in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and a great hail. So there's going to be great work to be done.
Brainstorm.
Islam? Exactly. Brainstorm. Right? And Islam. So, Islam. So now we're going to go to Revelation 16.
When you last checked the hour, you said 2:32?
No, it's 2:36. I got it.
No, when you yelled it out, you said 2:32. I was saying that's the as of the 7.
Indeed.
Right on time.
Islam. Keep that math with you, because we're going to need it in a minute.
I think you did it.
Hold on.
Hold up, Bo.
You doing the math.
Islam.
This long.
So, now it is Revelation 16 and 18. Pay attention. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. So now as you get further into the Revelations, things are starting to really climax and come to a close. So, I just tied in a bunch of holy records.
Islam.
Right?
Sure did.
So we're going to go into Revelations 10. Right? Now this, you see this right here, right?
Islam.
It's the cover of our one-on-ones, right?
That's right.
Right? Okay. You sure? Okay.
Positive.
Okay. Let's read. Revelations 10 and 4. And when the 7 thunders had uttered their voices, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. So, what does our Grand Sheik tell us? Write it down, more. This is an ancient instruction, right? But eventually, you'll get to a point where things are secret, silent, and sacred, and these things don't get written down. But you have to develop to that point. But on your way to that point, you have to write things down. This is why prophets had scribes. This is why we have these narratives today. Because we wasn't supposed to keep repeating the same mistakes of our ancestors. Islam, they put it literally in writing for you to understand. Islam.
I was doing some research on the Mali Empire, specific Sundiata Kiata. Anyway, they had a people they call griots, which the European term they call it folklore, but it wasn't really folklore. It was actually I want to say a way of keeping our history being told, because these also griots were, say, assemblymen or ambassadors to the rulers at the time. So they was, when people went out on migrated or went abroad on journeys and came back, whatever they saw was told to the griots. So they had to memorize this stuff. So they had kids growing up too as well that was griots that held traditional information of their history. It wasn't never written down. So it was also illustrated in story forms, like they have the kids and tell them stuff like that. The Europeans called it folklore, but it's actually our history. Actually, it's a book that I want to purchase. It's in the Library of Congress about a sister that spoke to griots that was back, that traces their line back to Sundiata Kiata, which is I want to say the first son of Bilal. It's traced back to Bilal. That they have this information that traces back to the Muzaim of the Prophet, peace be upon him. That all this information that you're speaking of is all in this.
It's all relative.
And the griots that come from a line of griots are still alive to this day that have this information, and they spoke to the sister, and she stayed in their homes too as well, and gathered and wrote all this information down as far as spirituality, everything you demonstrate, and also the Sheik as well, that they kept this mentally, and they used way more than 10% of their brain back then to now. They the gatekeepers of this information.
So just like you, just a bit on real quick, just like you said, that was the Mali Empire. People from that same section was the ones who came over here under the Olmecs. That's why I remember sort of the picture of the stele, and down both orders, both brotherhoods, you see they put it engraved in stone or whatever, how they was both bent over teaching to the little children.
Yeah.
So the griots and everything, that philosophy, that way of life brought over here.
Yeah.
Even Mayans on their pyramids or whatever, you see whoever's up there ruling or everything, they all, a lot of them, even the men, they'll be holding the children, showing that they passing information on to the young ones.
And I got into that. I was chasing my peoples, they got Ifuna. So that chases back to the Mali Empire. That specific person, Sundiata Kiata.
Let's see if I can finish up.
I'm sorry, I'm my fault.
That's long. All right. It's good. Monologue. Give me a little rest. It's long. All right. Let's get back into order. All right. So, back into Revelations 10:11. Because I want to tie in the one-on-ones as well. So, this is before you even crack it open. Right? And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hands to heaven and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and things that therein, and the earth, and the things that are therein are, and the sea, and the things which are therein, and that there should be time no longer, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, and he hath declared to his servants the prophets, and the voice which I heard from heaven spake unto me again, and said, Go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth.
Yes,
Islam? So you see an angel in front of y'all? Standing upon the sea, standing upon the earth?
That's right.
Right? Now this is on this little book, right? What was the little book given to us? Islam? A book of truth.
Islam.
All of what is going on, all these catastrophes that's going on, we still have the temple of God. And we still have the lightnings and the thunderings and the voices in the temple of God with the angels and the saints. Islam? You gotta think more of yourselves. Y'all holy people. A lot going on just in instruction, but what you gonna do with these instructions?
Islam.
Alright, so now let's get into the science. Islam? Alright. So, when you're dealing, like I said before, when you're dealing with time, you have a study of time which is called horology. So how do you go about this horology? Well, one way is through geology, right? So this is in relation to the earth. So I'm going to give you the actual scientific terms in which you can use to understand. So the first method, matter of fact, let's start with geology began, right? Because did the ancient Egyptians call the study of the land geography?
No.
They ain't speak English, right? So where this word come from? What was this thing? What is this? All right, development of geology and paleontology. Right, I got 6 minutes. It's long. All right. Nicholas Steno, the Danish, 17th century. Geological laws, superposition, and original horizontal. Right? Then you have William Smith. The first geological map of England was made. Then John Ferrer found hand axes in a pit of bones of animals not living at that time. So this is during the time of, in America, we have the time of enlightenment. This is where you have certain understandings starting to be built and brought about, like psychology by way of William Wundt and some of the first earlier psychologists like B.F. Skinner or Sigmund Freud. Then you have the development of geology continues on. 1830, the principles of geology. 1856, Neanderthal discovery of the cranium found in Germany. And then you have On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. Now, as this science continue on, a lot of these earlier ideas or practices was removed, right? But some of them was good in relation to the study of time, and it was kept. So you have the principle of geology and paleontology. It's called the law. It is not strange that no happens. Law governs all events. Islam. And we in the science bag now.
Yeah.
All right? But that truth still ain't changed. Islam. Reason why this little book came, as we read. Islam. The law of superposition. Lower strata are older than above strata. A strata is a dispositional layer of rock or sediment. What did you just say, bro? All right, so let's break it down. You got 3 layers, right? If you find something from here, it's older from when you find something from here.
That's right.
Right? So, if you find a Walkman here, right? And you got an iPod here, right? And then you got an iPhone 11 here, right? As you start peeling back the layers, you start to find that things is older here.
That's right.
Right? So this is how you can tell time in relation to the positioning of where these things is found. So when you're dealing with archaeology, look at this. This is ancient. Then you dig a little bit further in the garden. Whoa, this is ancient. Then you have something which is called seriation. Because sometimes the land has moved. Right? So if you find right here something metal, right? You'd be like, oh, okay, maybe this is from another period. But you have to follow the line of strata. You find something that's deep in the ground, like, hold on, wait, this metal a little bit older, right? So in different time ages, there's ways that you can give dates to this. Then you have the principle of geology, which is called the law of original horizontally. Strata are laid down horizontally and are later deformed. So that's why I gave you the understanding of something being slow. Because when you look at strata, it just look like lines. Look like a cake. And you got the different layers, right? So you got 3-layer cake, you got 5-layer cake, right? It's all in relation into a forming of something in a circle placed and then develop upward, right? Even, because as we know, as things develop and become perfect, they develop upward. So was the planet. Islam? Indeed. So now we're going to go a little bit. Okay. So that's what's when you use relative dating, right? So you just want to get a relative date. But as we showed in our record, you have relative dating. That was during the time of Eber, during the time of the earthquake. But as time moves on, science develops. Now when you get to Revelations, we know the hour. Islam? So the narrative is spectacular, but it's built off the intelligence of a human mind in relation to a human literature and to a human experience. Islam. And as the first humans, we have all that recollection. Islam? Islam. All right. Now, relative dating, chronology, ordering archaeological sites or artifacts based on their relative relationship to each other. What, bro? What did you say? Okay, so let me clear this up. So you have a bunch of things in the same spot, in the same layers, you can see that they're relative to that time. Right? Absolute dating, putting a number, date on strata or archaeological sites. Example, 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years BCE. And this is how it's done through the process of absolute dating and radiometric dating. Islam. I just need a few more minutes because this is the main part.
Okay.
So, something that I was taught before I was able to go in college and study this in the lab and through science, I got this degree from my grand sheik. It's talking about tree ring science, which is called dendrochronology. Tree ring dating, matching 3 rings in a sequence back in time. So this is how you do this. You can look at a tree, and when you cut the tree and you see the striation of rings, in between each ring is like 100 years. So if you got a tree with 10 rings, 1,000-year-old tree. If you got a tree with 3,000 years, whoa, that's a very old tree in relation to that. But there was a flood and the water came and then it changed the atmosphere and hold on, wait, that is not how absolute dating goes, because most people gonna tell you about, there was a flood and carbon dating doesn't work like that because of the atmosphere and water. No, that is not how this science works. I talked about Sumer earlier, right? There's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. It talks about an investor. His name is Arkad. Arkad, he learns from a master named Alganish. I'm in a rush, or those names might be switched. But basically, he tells him, if you're going to deal with jewelry, don't go to a brick maker.
That's right.
So if you're going to deal with time, don't deal with it from somebody who's not dealing with it from the realm of science. So this is how radium dating goes. Radiocarbon. Plants and animals absorb atmospheric carbon-14 during life. At death, carbon-14 starts to decay to nitrogen-14 with a half-life of 5,370 years. Also, due to changes in atmospheric carbon, dates must be calibrated using dendrochronology. So, there's no way that hydrogen and oxygen is going to affect that carbon in its half-life of breaking down into nitrogen. Okay. So when you do certain absolute dating, that's the date. But when it comes in relation to, I'm about to do part 3. Okay. So, in relation to the timeline, in relation to our chapter 47, you can see that earthquake along to the chronology of the Bible happened 4,000 years ago. So it's touching on the history. How old is that flag?
Over 10,000 years old.
Islam. That's another demonstration of time. And with that, I say peace.
Peace.
Wow.